Hi, Angie Ebba here again, and today I'm going to talk to you about metaphors. So, metaphors are a literary device which are used in all types of writing and are really found a lot in poetry. However, I wanted to talk to you today about metaphors because I think that they're a really important thing to have a good grasp of in life, especially when we're tasked with dealing with things that are really abstract concepts, are maybe big emotions to feel, things that are hard to put words on. So, metaphors are basically a connection between an abstract concept, be that an emotion such as joy or sadness, something that you might experience, like isolation, for example, and a concrete item. So, for example, you might say that joy is a bouncing ball. Okay, so joy being the abstract concept, the bouncing ball being the concrete object. So, today I want to run you through an exercise of how we can come up with metaphors and then talk a little bit about how we can use them in our artistic practices, but also just in life. So, why don't you grab a pen or pencil and a piece of paper and let's get writing. So when I do this, I like to just take a piece of paper and divide it into 3 columns. In the first column, I am going to put abstract. This is where all of the abstract ideas are going to go. The third column is going to be concrete nouns. And then there in the middle column, I'm going to put descriptive words or adjectives that will be describing the concrete nouns. So what I like to do is just really start kind of as things come to me, just start writing them down into the column. I start with the abstract ideas and just kind of go from there. If I'm doing this on my own, I'm going to try to fill up the entire column, but for this practice, I'll just put down about 5 words. Then I'm going to move over to the concrete nouns, and I'm going to do the same thing here where I just start listing ideas. These are not things that are connected in any way to the abstract ideas that I put down. These are just concrete nouns that come to mind. So for example, I've got puppy, graveyard, window, coffee, and then, like I said before, I'm going to try to just do an entire column of them if I'm doing this on my own. In the middle here, you're going to write descriptive words. Again, these are not relating in particular to the abstract concepts or to the concrete nouns that you listed. These are just descriptive words that come to mind as you are writing. It can be anything that you come up with that is an adjective. So for example, I've got soggy and forlorn as a couple of my descriptive words that I came up with. Steaming, I have to admit, did come up because I was thinking about the coffee, but these are not things that have to relate. In fact, it's better if they don't actually relate to the abstract and concrete words that you wrote down. Then I'm going to start looking for connections. So I'm connecting sadness, empty, and window. So that would make a metaphor of sadness is an empty window, then isolation, forlorn, graveyard. Sadness, isolation is a forlorn graveyard. Basically, you're just going to be connecting words from each column to create metaphors. So what do you do once you have all of these metaphors written in your book? Well, what I would do then is I would choose one that really stands out to me and resonates with me. And I would take it, and that could be a starting point for my writing. I personally tend to write a lot of poetry, so that's what I would go with. However, if poetry isn't your thing and you like writing other types, you can incorporate these metaphors into any type of writing. Similarly, you can actually really do a lot of artistic creations with these. So for example, I'm really liking this one, sadness is an empty window. So I could write a poetry with that, but I could also take that and do a different type of artistic creation, like create a painting that represents this for me, or create a dance that represents this. So a lot of creative endeavors can be made out of these metaphors. But the other thing that I think is really important for us is when we're going through times that are difficult, or times that we don't really have the words to put to things, right? That it's important for us to have language in order to communicate that. So, for example, I have been personally struggling a little bit with the isolation that has come from the last couple of weeks of being homebound. For me, I'm homebound with a 13-year-old who I'm homeschooling, and it's a transition. Even for me, who I'm a disabled person who has spent a lot of time isolated, but even still, this is still a major transition. So I might, instead of doing this where I'm listing out three, lots of things with three, I may just list isolation and then come up with a whole bunch of concrete nouns and a whole bunch of descriptives and see what kind of things resonate for me as far as what does isolation feel like to me? What can I compare it to? And kind of the reasoning that I would want to do this is to put that language on something which is such an abstract idea. What does it actually feel like? What does it actually look like? If I were to see isolation out in the world where I could touch it, where I could feel it, what would that look like? And so metaphors are a really great way of giving us the language to communicate some of those ideas that are bigger and a little bit harder to communicate. So this is a great way to get your creative juices going, a great way to tap into doing some writing or some other artistic endeavors, but it's also just a really wonderful way to find the words to communicate and deal with some of the things that you're going through. So I hope this has been a helpful exercise for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future in another video. Thanks so much.